Good evening, Madam President. It's 6 p.m. I've started the recording.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're going to start our meeting. We're going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Mrs. Santiago.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence for any special intentions and for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton,
Present.
Dr. Henderson,
Here.
Mr. Howard,
Present.
Mr. Levinstein,
Here.
Ms. Maida, Ms. Vineo,
Here.
Ms. Santiago,
Here.
Mr. Stridiron,
Here.
Mr. Walker.
Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby recesses into executive session for the following purpose: matter made confidential under FERPA, employment history of particular individuals, matters leading to the employment of particular individuals, and to obtain advice from legal counsel. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton, Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Vineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron.
Yes.
See you in executive session.
Good evening, Madam President. I've started the recording back up.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Welcome, everyone, to the first meeting of June of our Board of Education. And I'm going to turn this meeting over to our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Badia. Mr. McCoy, is Dr. Badia on?
Pardon me, not yet. No.
Madam President,
Yes, sir. Hi, Mr. Forget.
good evening. Would it be possible to start with 2.2?
Sure. Dr. Padilla will join us in a minute. Mr. Forget, why don't you introduce our principals that are here? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening we have Ms. Una Miller here to present to us about the school improvement work that's been occurring at Kidney Avenue Memorial School under the support of Mr. David Brown, Director of Planning and Accountability. So at this time, I'd like Ms. Miller to take it on.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Forget. Thank you, Madam President, members of board, members of senior staff who are here, and members of our community for joining us. I'd like to provide you with a status update for the work we've been doing around our SEP this year at GAMS and review the 5 areas of focus. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So I'll be doing a very brief summary for you on the work that I introduced a few months ago, talking a little bit about the academic impact we've made this year and looking ahead to our preliminary plans for next year. Thank you. So just a reminder, our 5 areas of focus this year have been around attendance, tracking academic interventions around reading, working on our social emotional learning program, the zones of regulation, encouraging parent communication and going deep on that, as well as family teacher partnership. So our first goal is around attendance, and a system of attendance recognition was put in place in the classrooms, acknowledging students not only for perfect attendance, but for good and improved attendance as well. Students use their own daily attendance tracker each morning to take responsibility for their own attendance and for measuring their own progress. Monthly recognition also occurs in each classroom, and that really varies by classroom depending on the teacher and the students and what they'd like that particular month. But it includes and is not limited to things like dance parties, inviting parents in virtually, certificates, and different kinds of rewards that are fun for elementary level students. Though our average daily attendance rate is not one that makes us happy, I think it is looking at district-wide attendance, and what I'm assuming will be the attendance that we'll see at the state level, comparable to what other schools are seeing right now in the pandemic. But what we can celebrate is the fidelity of this new attendance intervention we put in place this year, with 93% of our classes using the attendance tracker daily. Next slide, please. So our next goal was around tracking academic interventions, specifically around reading. So to meet the instructional needs of students who need extra support, a school-wide protocol was put in place to track reading interventions. By matching the reading deficit to an intervention, students receive targeted instruction to support a specific reading skill. And this work was done obviously during the school day, but the data was analyzed in grade teams during regular PLCs and supported by the monthly PD we had from the American Reading Company. And the result was that 93% of our teachers were able to match their reading deficits with targeted interventions as measured by analysis of their intervention trackers. Next slide, please. Our third goal was around our social emotional learning initiative focused around the zones of regulation. So the zones of regulation was implemented in the classrooms to provide a system to be used throughout the building, promoting a common language and a way for students to express their emotional needs. Students are familiar with the 4-part color-coded system that they use to let us know how they are feeling, their emotional needs, and to help them self-regulate. We've been working a lot around establishing this common language since this was interrupted. The implementation was interrupted last year. The measure that we had planned on using was discipline referrals, and we certainly did have a reduction, though I can't honestly say I can make a direct correlation between the zones and the reduction in discipline referrals. It's an apples and oranges year, I'd say. But 24 discipline referrals is great, and I'll take it. The real success, though, is in the walkthrough data that we gathered around students applying the language of the zones. And in 97% of all of our classes, the zones is being implemented with fidelity, and students are able to express themselves independently using the language of the zones and talk about the tools that they use to make sure that they're in the green zone and ready to learn. Next slide, please. So our fourth goal was around parent communication. So we established this year clear common expectations for outreach and regular communication with families. GAMS teachers, I have to say, have gone above and beyond in this, trying every possible means to reach out to families throughout the pandemic, and documenting all of their communication and sharing it with relevant staff members and administration so that we're all in the loop as we progress through the year. And these efforts to open up the lines of communication have resulted in great satisfaction from our families. Next slide. Thank you. And our final goal is related to goal 4, family teacher partnership. So similar to that previous goal, we worked on eliminating barriers to communication with families, using apps that are accessible on all devices, offering multiple means of language translation, sharing information and ideas to support learning at home. Again, the tremendous outreach on the part of our GAMS staff has resulted in increased connectivity between families and the school, which has been great and particularly important in this year. Unfortunately, we do continue to have some families that we're unable to reach, but we'll continue to work on reaching out, trying new things, and making sure that all feel welcome at school and they know that we're here to support them. Next slide, please. All right, so academic impact. Proficiency in reading as measured by our ERLA assessment is up 20% from the fall. We continue to see an increase in teacher and student conferencing, with almost every student receiving at least one reading conference every 14 days. And students are meeting their power goals and they know what their own goals are, which is great. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so looking ahead to 21-22, our SLT has been meeting and working on priorities for next year. We always like to reflect on what we've done and what we've done over the past few years at GAMS. And I think we're in a really great place for next year. We've learned a lot this year, and we're kind of taking the lemonade, I guess, out of a pandemic year in thinking about the new tools we've learned, particularly when it comes to family communication, and how we can maintain a lot of the great virtual tools and meld them with the wonderful old school ways of family engagement and events, hopefully, that we can host and welcoming families back into the building, but really with the goal of increasing access to all. So that's one priority for next year. We'd also like to go a little bit deeper in embedding student voice into life at GAMS. As part of our SEP preparation, we've done some really meaningful student interviews, and we'd like to think about ways to make that a regular practice, and developing our practices and systems around meaningful feedback for students. Teachers have really honed skills around conferencing with students, especially when it comes to reading. So thinking about how to expand those into different content areas and to really start creating dialogue with students about their learning. So I thank you so much for your time. I tried to stay succinct, but I welcome any questions.
Board members, does anybody have any questions or comments? I have a comment, Mrs. Miller. I love that 92% of the families are really satisfied with how the school communicates. That to me says a lot. That says that you're reaching out and people are happy with how you're reaching out. So thank you. And thank you for doing a great job at GAMS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Ms. Manel, just a quick comment. Ms. Miller, just want to thank you and the entire faculty and staff for trying your very best given the circumstances. And so we're going to continue to push and make sure we're reaching higher and higher. but please just communicate to the faculty and staff on behalf of the board and senior staff. We're very appreciative of the focus and the constant work. Thank you.
I will. Thank you so much.
Mr. Forget, you want to introduce the next principal, please?
That concludes the items tonight. It was just scams. We were going to present South, but Ms. Brooks was not feeling well this evening.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Padilla, you're on.
All right. Thank you so much. So I'm just going to present my screen so we can go over Operation Reopen. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, so we are winding down to Operation Reopen, and at our next board meeting, it'll be the last one for this academic school year. So for this evening, we have 3 updates for you. So the first is just a quick overview on where we're at with our ESYP. At our last curriculum committee meeting, both assistant superintendents provided a robust overview of the programming. But what you see here in front of you is something a little bit new, and that's our Leave to Learn Fridays. And this is an opportunity to engage students, as you guys know, back into being with their peers, back with being adults in person, but using the summer as a way to re-engage, to reconnect students. And as we've consistently communicated, this is not just about remediation. And we're taking a very strategic approach to how we're re-engaging students and getting them excited again during the summer in preparation for September. So as you can see here by some of the images, there's a mixture of all kinds of different programs for Fridays, both in district and out of district, that we believe will excite students. And again, the purpose here is to re-engage, connect, and have fun. So we have received some questions regarding graduation. So I'll try to be as clear as I can tonight. As of today, we have not received any updated information from the New York State Department of Health as to changes in regulations and guidance as it relates to graduation. So to the families who have reached out, to those of you who I've talked to on the phone, again, I recognize your frustration. We all, the board, our entire team, our administrators and teachers, would love nothing more than to allow for more guests and for our traditional graduation. So we are trying, our team is working super hard to try to create a memorable experience. Absent any change in the guidance, our plans right now reflect 3 ceremonies to take place on June 24th. And again, that's with 2 guests per scholar. As a result of doing the 3 ceremonies, and yes, I recognize, because I've talked to a number of families who have said, yeah, but this district over here is only doing 1 ceremony. And the reason why they're able to do that is because they have less students. So for us, in order to accommodate the amount of students we want to accommodate and not have to put on the extra logistical operational burden of having to check vaccines and do rapid tests, we need to do 3 ceremonies. But we're committed to doing those 3 ceremonies in the same day. And as a result, we won't have to check for proof of vaccine or having to administer a test. Given the newest guidance that has changed as of last night, and I'll get into this a little bit in the next slide, we're not going to require adults and children to wear masks for graduation because that's an outdoor event. And then again, for those families who can't have more relatives attend, we are going to live stream it so that way you can be there virtually. And then to the families and students who may be watching tonight, again, please be mindful of the senior event dates on June 22nd and June 23rd. So there's been a lot of information in the media, on the radio, on TV regarding communication that has come out of the New York State government. And as of today, students and adults are no longer required to wear a mask outdoors. And as you can see here in parentheses, that also includes athletics. However, we also received word yesterday that the state will not change guidance as it relates to mask mandates for indoor events, teaching and learning in schools. And yes, I recognize there seems to be a disconnect between what's allowed publicly and what's allowed in schools. That is far above our Board of Ed and myself. Those are decisions made at the governor's level. As of today, and what was communicated yesterday, there won't be any changes to the guidance relating to indoor mask requirements, which means, at least for the next 3 weeks, the requirement continues to be in place to have everyone wearing a mask. I can't wait till that's lifted because myself, I'm tired of wearing the mask, but I do it because we're required to. What was also new in the press conference yesterday was this notion that when New York State hits 70% vaccination compliance, all restrictions will be lifted. And as you can see here, New York State is at 68.8. So we're relatively close. And so if the restrictions are going to be lifted at 70%, I have to imagine that's going to happen any week now. So we did send out a survey. As you can see here, 960 people responded. And given the information that came out last night that we did not anticipate was going to come out last night, and no one did for that matter, no one anticipated that the governor was going to, or the New York State Department of Health was going to write to the CDC on Friday, causing a complete nightmare across the state. We closed out the survey tonight, giving more than 24 hours for folks to share with us what they thought. And the question was really simple. Given the change at the Department of Health level, how did people feel about following that guidance? And as you can see here, 76% of the 960 people who responded felt that the district should revise its reopening plans to reflect those changes. And so just to be extra clear, the only change we're talking about at this point is mask requirements outdoors. And this is probably the last time you're going to see this slide, because as you can tell from what I've already shared with you, no mask requirements outdoors. And I should be extra diligent in the communication tonight to say, for any person who wishes to continue to wear a mask outdoors, we encourage it. However, you're not required.
Dr. Padilla, I see one hand. I see Mr. Stridiron.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam President. So on the slide with the graduation, you have 3 ceremonies. I believe it's 2 large and 1 small. What determines who's in the small ceremony? Is it specifically for a specific school, or is it just the alphabetical list?
I'll double check that, but we're not at a stage right now where we're saying one is small and one is big.
So we're just doing alphabetical ceremonies divided into 3?
No, there's planning taking place right now around who would go to what. Yes, last name would be considered, as well as P-Tech being all together, NFA West being all together, et cetera. So right now, those things are still being determined. Final decisions will be made on that very shortly and then communicated to families.
Do you know the approximate start time and end time for the total day?
Yeah, so right now we're looking at, and again, this is tentative, and this is why I didn't put it into the slide, just because things are likely to change with more information. So I just, I'll share what we're thinking, but again, it's not final. 11 o'clock, 1:30, and either 3:30 or 4.
Thank you.
So the last graduation should be over at 5:30.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Howard, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. Dr. Padilla, in regards to to one of your senior days. It's a compound question. The Chromebooks. So my first question is, over the course of a student's high school career, 9 through 12, do they change Chromebooks or do they keep the same Chromebook for a period of time? My next question would be, could we as a district consider students that as they graduate, they have their Chromebook for 3-4 years, that we allow them to keep it? Because I'm basing this on, when we collect them back, there's probably about 2 or 3 iterations behind of the new Chromebooks. And those are something that will eventually become obsolete in the district, I'm assuming. So I guess my question is, do they rotate or turn in their Chromebooks to update, get new ones? If not, can we consider giving the Chromebook to seniors as they graduate? Take it with them, because they keep some of these Chromebooks. They can keep their lives on. A lot of information. Can that be something that we can consider as a district?
It's interesting that you're asking this because senior staff discussed this idea on Monday about whether or not they can keep their Chromebook. So I'm not going to answer that publicly yet because it's more of a legal question around what's allowed or not allowed, and I'm exploring that. But to your first question, right now our plan is that when a child is born, they get in the hospital, they'll get a book and a Chromebook, and they'll keep that until they graduate high school. I should have made you guys kind of smile a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So no, they do. There's certain stages where children will get a brand new Chromebook for some of the reasons you just identified, just because the technology changes so fast. So they should get a brand new Chromebook for the most part during certain transitional years, because we know the technology, the wear and tear, what have you. Okay.
Got some additional hands, Madam President.
Well, wait, I see Mr. Levinstein's hand, and I called on him.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Madam President.
All right.
Thank you. So my question revolves around the 70% vaccination compliance. If that is hit within the next 1 or 2 weeks or so, is the expectation that schools also will have no restrictions? And if that's the case, would a graduation go to be a typical graduation like we've had in previous years?
Yeah, Mr. Levinstein, that's it's a loaded question only because the state has already communicated that they're not going to change anything on masks, and mask is one of the mitigation strategies. I wouldn't say it's an automatic. So let's just play this out a little bit. I think we're all hopeful to hit that 70% so the restrictions could be lifted. We would ultimately make a decision as a district collectively to see how people feel. Now, as you can see from the survey results, and again, only 960 people participated, I think the community is wanting to reduce those mitigation strategies and those restrictions to kind of get back to some level of normalcy. So I guess if I were betting, I would say, yes, the community would want to, reduce those restrictions and then have a ceremony that they're accustomed to. But that's a big what if. And that's why tonight we're presenting this information, because irrespective of any change, the district has to prepare to provide children a memorable ceremony. And right now we're looking to do that over 3 ceremonies. That is likely going to be the case pending any dramatic changes. So if they change the outdoor capacity, then certainly we'll revisit our plans, as long as it doesn't dramatically impact what needs to take place in order to provide supervision. There's a number of logistical things that go into making sure there's one ceremony. That's our hope, but we need enough time to prepare for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Walker, I see you.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate the work that is presently being done. I would also like to place as a in your consideration the possibility of returning to the moving up or graduation, unquote unquote, for kindergarten students. I think that's one of the things I know with my own family. We look back at some of those goofy pictures and enjoy and the like. And if possible, if we can do that for the kindergartners, I think that would be great. Thank you.
Mr. Walker,
Dr. Padilla, you're on. Go ahead.
Mr. Walker, if you ever want to share one of your pictures, we'd be happy to see it.
I love to, because I look like the scholar and intellect I am today.
Just on that note, because we have had, and this is what one of the things that has been really difficult for my team and our administrators during this pandemic is knowing that the decisions you make, some people are going to be for it and many people are going to be against it. And we're trying to extend the same grace that we're asking people to extend to us. The one thing that we're doing is staying consistent across all ceremonies. And that way, one school doesn't do it one way versus another, fully understanding that, to your point, families want to come in, they want to be part of that in-person experience. But again, we're under some restrictions and we're just trying to be consistent. And to all our families that are watching, again, I just ask for your continued flexibility and patience and understanding with us. And it's the only reason why we're moving in this direction, is so that way we have continuity across the entire district. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you.
Mr. Stridiron, I see your hand.
Yeah, to follow up about the moving up ceremonies, I saw a couple schools were having virtual ceremonies. I mean, we're not dealing with a lot of students here. I don't understand why we can't have an outdoor graduation or moving up ceremony instead of a drive-through graduation. Or we have plenty of land, at the schools. Why can't we have an outdoor? I'm sure parents would be willing to stand up for a little bit instead of having chairs set up to be able to see their kids actually graduate instead of driving through and grabbing a diploma. Can anything be done on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're reviewing constantly. So it's not to say that's completely out of the question. So I certainly appreciate, the suggestion, and I'll work with Ms. Moriarty and Mr. Bear and others just to, go back to administrators and see if there are any other things we could potentially do. But again, we fully understand kind of how people feel right now, and we're just trying to be consistent. So if there's a way, we'll explore it.
Thank you, Dr. Padilla. I see no more hands.
Okay, I want to move on to 2.3, and thank you, Mr. Forget, for covering 2.2. I'm really proud of the fact that over the last several years, both in the state, locally, and nationally, the district has received a number of prestigious recognitions. And so this next one is to Mr. Prakash, who was recognized by the New York State Administrators Association, better known as SANES, for being a School Administrator of the Year for our region. And it's a big region. We were able to present him with the Golden Eagle, which is the first time we've done that. And just want to publicly recognize Mr. Prakash for his achievements, his leadership, and his, as you can see, his peers in the region recognized him as well. So congratulations, Mr. Prakash. 2.4 is a recognition of our CNA program. So I want to just again thank Dr. Roman and his team, as well as Linda Romano, as well as all of our CNA students who participated in volunteering and helping to manage, facilitate, and operate the vaccination clinics that we were able to do on site. So again, just join me in acknowledging them for giving back to their community and helping the community be safer. And then last but not least, in the spirit of just continued recognitions for the good work that's taking place in our district, we want to acknowledge our very own district clerk, Mr. McCoy, on his recognition through the Orange County School Boards for the phenomenal leadership that he provides the school district. So Mr. McCoy, congratulations as well. And Madam President, that concludes my items. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to reiterate the congratulations that Dr. Padilla said, Mr. Prakash, Mrs. Romano, and our nursing students, and our own Mr. McCoy. Congratulations and thank you for your hard work. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to public comments on agenda items. Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. We have 2 public comments on agenda items. The first public comment was submitted by Claudia Francia Moore. Ms. Claudia Francia Moore, a probationary teacher, has submitted 2 emails regarding her employment, and the board is in receipt of those emails. Second comment comes from Mr. Bob Hulata. BOE members, the question of how staff and students return to school has been an ongoing topic of discussion. How will Newburgh resume classes? The goal hopefully is to reopen with an improved and more effective educational program that addresses the multitude of conflicts and needs among our diverse population that existed before into the pandemic closure. Across the educational community, the thinking is that the time to address the ongoing issues of inequity, diversity, and gaps in our schools within the reopening plan. Earlier this year, Michael Hines, superintendent of Port Washington District, noted, quote, now is the time for our school leaders to generate new propelling philosophy of education and an innovative architecture for a just and humane school system. We must refocus our energy on a foundation built on a sense of purpose, forging relationships, and maximizing the potential and talents of all children. Let's take advantage of the possibility that our nation's attention can shift 180 degrees. It is our collective responsibility to foster engaging and meaningful environments when educating our children in the new era of the post-pandemic education. Now is the time to revolutionize this antiquated system built on old structures and ideologies. End quote. The shutdown exposed growing emotional and political conflicts when negotiating the details of remote learning. This crisis amplified existing conflicts about funding, access to quality instructors, and effective instruction among the haves and the have-nots. How will schools open will matter. Where they'll be full-time, a split week, or a part-day model. Will homeschooling be embraced? How effective can one's model address learning lag, emotional social issues, family needs, and more effective models for teaching and learning? As the fears of the pandemic subside, will the district be pressured to go back to old arrangements of the pre-pandemic era? Will the wants of the haves compete and diminish efforts to address the needs of the have-nots? Long-standing rules about when, where, and how instruction must take place are changing. Will it be the old arrangement of a classroom, a teacher in 180 days? How effective can this be going forward, considering the many needs, the growing gaps, and the inequities exposed? The role of unions and contracts will matter. Some staff have genuine fears to return to in-person schooling. Some will prefer new methods of instruction developed or discovered during the pandemic, and others want more freedom and responsibility to experiment with research-based models to address student needs. Contract language, the old arrangement, may be outdated, ineffective, and standing in the way to more effectively address issues of equity, diversity, emotional, social needs of our staff, their students, and the role of families in the community. In closing, I ask the district to consider the following research-based models to address these issues. Number 1, smaller class size. Like all models, success comes from a host of related efforts, including teacher talent, experience, skill sets, building logistics, and long-term funding. Number 2, looping / 11-month school year, assigning students to 1 or more teachers for 2+ years. Combining the 2 would address the social emotional issues and lost learning with a consistent, dedicated, well-trained staff. There may also be some application to high school courses. Number 3, ungraded multiple years, possibly combined with looping an 11-month school year. Students focus on catching up with learning and moving up without the constraints of a defined school year. The goal is that these students catch up with their cohort in 2 to 3 years. Number 4, allow students in grades 6 through 12 to take 1 to 2 fewer classes and extend their education over an extra year or 2. Some could use the summer to fill in the missing classes to graduate with their cohort. Number 5, late start time for teenagers. Many teens learned during the pandemic what medical science has known for decades. They need sleep 8 to 9 hours. High school needs to begin closer to 9 a.m. Number 6, design a school day that begins between 7 to 8 a.m. and ends between 5 to 6 p.m. Our families will benefit and many students will be in a better place. Number 7, remote learning, whether full-time or hybrid. Some students have demonstrated the responsibility to thrive and gain proficiency and wish to continue to do so. Number 8, do more to enlist the support of qualified community members who wish to volunteer to support your efforts educating and supporting our students. Some of today's challenges were being addressed back then. Today, those challenges have become more apparent and demand more of each of us. That concludes the public comments on agenda items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Why don't you take a sip of water, because I'm going to move things around, and I'd like to do public comments on non-agenda items now.
Oh, great, that's me again. Have been 9 public comments submitted on non-agenda items. The first comment comes from Kylene Alfonso. As we approach the end of a singularly difficult and tenuous school year, I want to thank the members of the Board of Education for their service to our community. It can be a very thankless job. I also want to acknowledge those that support programs that create opportunities for our scholars, like the opening of NFA West and the development of the new CTE Center. Thanks to you, Ms. Mineo, Mr. Howard, Mr. Walker, Ms. Maida, on behalf of all kids who needed and who will need something just a little bit different. Number 2 came from Rodrigo Rosas. Hi, my name is Rodrigo Rosas, and I'm a senior in NFA West. In the beginning of March, I was given the opportunity to take my passion project above and beyond right on NFA West property. I began getting an intense auto detailing in August of 2020 and was able to give my own business named NY Auto Finesse. With the help of NFA West staff, I was able to provide auto detailing services to staff members in the district every week. When I announced this program to staff, I was pleased to hear that our school board president, Ms. Carol Mineo, presented me with the opportunity to work on her vehicle. When I met her, she was very appreciative of the service I was providing and the work I put into my own business. With her support, I have felt I have risen above the bar I had set for myself in the beginning. Her support and the support of many other BOE members has allowed me to start my own car detailing business and be a proud member of the class of 2021 as an early graduate. I want to thank the Newburgh and Large City School District BOE for the continuous support of all our scholars in the district, but especially those at the West Campus of NFA. Number 3, hello, my name is Ashia Alashika. Pardon me if I didn't pronounce correct. And I'm a 10th grade student at NFA West. I have recently read some disturbing posts on social media surrounding the NCSD board members, and I wanted to take a minute to share my thoughts. I had the opportunity to listen to Ms. Mineo's leadership story last year as a guest speaker at NFA West. I was so inspired by her because she taught me that if I had a goal to reach and I put my mind to it, as well as I work hard for it, I would reach it. I got to hear how Ms. Mineo was the only woman in her family that was able to finish her education, and that inspired me because I want to accomplish the same goal so I could possibly change the world. When Ms. Mineo said she was the first woman to finish her education, a spark of hope lit inside of me that I will be able to finish my education and go to college, which could change the legacy for girls in my family to finish their education. I made a video, sent it to Ms. Mineo, and the next day she came to school to meet me. She told me how she's so proud of me and told me how that she will always support me. Ever since that meeting, she has been coming to all my expositions, and for each one of them, she would say that I grew so much and that she's so proud of me. I really love Ms. Mineo. Her story helped me grow as a student and as a person, and I'm grateful for that. I don't think that many people realize that she volunteers her time to serve as a BOE member and to work with West. I'm so thankful and grateful that she chose to spend her free time with a student like me. Number 4 came from Jesus Martinez. Throughout the years, I've had the opportunity to have a good and close relationship with Mr. Howard. He has always been there for me when I need him. He pushes us to do better academically and also to be a better person. He made me realize that with hard work and dedication, I can accomplish anything in life. Mr. Howard has helped me to be prepared for college interviews and also helped me to be prepared for my expositions. He meets with me every Monday and Friday to see how I'm doing and how I'm feeling. This really means a lot to me because he has taught me so much and to see everything in a different and positive way. Mr. Howard is one of the best mentors that the district has. He does this and so much more without asking for anything in return. I feel as though his efforts have gone unnoticed and I'm truly appreciative. It is because of him that I will be crossing Academy Field this year. Thank you, Mr. Howard. Number 5 is from Lena Jalbert, to whom it may concern. As I reflect on the end of this year, I think about those within the NECSD community that have truly made a difference in the lives of our students. I want to take a moment to thank these members of the Board of Education for their commitment to our scholars. You have been working tirelessly behind the scenes to make sure that our schools and those who populate them get what they need to be successful. You do not go unnoticed in my eyes. I would like to specifically acknowledge the work through President Carol Manale and Vice President Phil Howard have done for the students at NFA West through programs such as My Brother's Keeper and the Learning Through Internship program. Without their service and dedication, our students would not be where they are today. I would also like to thank Mr. Walker and Ms. Maida for their unwavering support of our advisory program and what we do with our students at West. Because of our scholars are now seen and heard, they feel validated by your support and are excelling. Sincerely, Nina Jalbert. Number 6 comes from Michelle Newcomb. I'd like to recognize the board members for their tireless dedication to the students of the district. These volunteers are tasked with setting the vision and goals for the district. They come from a myriad of backgrounds and experiences, inviting different ideas and insights to decisions and policy-making processes. The time they invest in their roles on the board speak to the commitment to the children of our district. Thank you. The 7th comment came from Lakia Stoops. Mr. Philip Howard is a true definition of mentor, advocate, educator, and motivator. Mr. Howard has supported the scholars and staff members at NFA West in a tremendous way before NFA West had a building. He has made a commitment to being present whenever we call or need him. We've had a lot of Black and Latino young men in our district who need guidance and support. Mr. Howard comes to NFA West twice a week and spends 2 hours mentoring young men and providing them with life lessons that have contributed to their growth and development. As a staff member, it's refreshing to know that I can call Mr. Howard and he will stop at a student's home, job, or come to school to check and provide support. He has started incentive programs to encourage our young men to be successful academically and with attendance. Just recently, he came up with Race to the 4th Quarter Finish Line, a competition with 2 seniors and 2 student athletes who were struggling to get to school on time. All of the students were motivated and excited to be a part of this initiative. Their first period attendance improved tremendously. Mr. Howard is a true definition of above and beyond. He is a true definition of I am my brother's keeper. He has reached out to community members for their support of our students and will step out onto the field or court for any athlete to advocate for their success and hold them accountable. The district would not be out where it is today without Mr. Philip Howard. The 8th comment came from Tyler Waters. I would like for the public to know the following about Mr. Howard, the Vice President of the NECSD Board of Education. It wasn't until the 10th grade that I was able to meet Mr. Philip Howard, who told me what route was needed to take in order to go further with my talents. Anytime Mr. Howard met us and became mentoring, he would always come with an inspirational quote like, "Excuses are tools for incompetence used to build monuments of nothing. Those who specialize in them will never succeed at anything." That one quote showed me why I need to use my talents and push forward in my life. He would also talk about other things such as history specific to Black men. Mr. Howard always makes sure we know the history of our ancestors so that as being a young African-American men, we not only paved the path for our future, but represented it in a mature and bold way. Thank you, Mr. Howard, for all you have done and continue to do for the district and the students like me. Tyler Walters, class of 2021. The last comment is submitted by Samia Branch. To whom may concern, my name is Samia Branch, a junior at NFA West campus. I would like to say thank you to the Board of Education for making the best and most stable decision for us. I would specifically like to thank Mr. Philip Howard for the sacrifices he makes for his mentors. Without Mr. Howard, I don't think I would be this far in life as I am right now. This man shows he cares about his community, and the amount of respect for him, the amount of respect the city of Newburgh shows him is crazy. When I met Mr. Howard, I cursed him out. Any other man would have left me for dead and told the school to kick me out. This man stayed and helped me through the pandemic and my junior year of school. Mr. Howard didn't fight to get on the board for show. He got on for change. And and he himself is making that change. Sincerely, Samir Branch, class of 2022. That concludes the items submitted under non-agenda items, Madam President.
Thank you. Now have a sip of water because you really read a lot. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to board committees. Curriculum and Instruction Committee, Mrs. Maida.
Thank you, Madam President. Once again, our agenda for curriculum was very exciting. We have 4 resolutions, which you'll see on our agenda for this evening. Our American Reading Company sent 2 representatives, and we had an excellent update. They gave us a very thorough presentation on culturally relevant resources for our wonderful reading program. We had updates on our Summer Institute for our teachers. And of course, we had an update on the summer opportunities for our scholars, including the Friday offerings for all of our scholars also. Please continue to look at the website for updates because those will be becoming updated regularly. Finally, we continued our CLR presentation by Ms. Moriarty and Mr. Bayer, and this will continue to be on our agenda for the following year. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our Exceptional Learners Committee, Mrs. Burton.
Good evening, everyone. So Exceptional Learners Committee met on June 2nd, 2021. It included 3 resolutions that are before us tonight. One includes the purchase, licensing, and materials from our SEL screener called Panorama Education. The second is to purchase SEL Curriculum Leader in Me for continuation in Gardnertown and Fostertown schools. And the third resolution is to accept the donation of $6,480 from the Stories for All project, which has awarded a credit to the school district to purchase books in the categories of diversity, inclusion, and cultural responsive. So that's very exciting. We received updates around exceptional learners, particularly the Project Search initiative, and it included the identification of a new partner, which is now Legoland. And this it just gives young people the opportunity to participate, get hands-on participatory employment skills training on site. And so this will take place 5 days a week right at the Legoland site. And it includes mentors that have been identified by Legoland to offer mentorship to our young people. We also received a 2021-22 priorities update. Of course, compliance and CSE meetings are, always a priority and a given. However, come the new year, there's going to be a large shift, which will include an instructional focus to include working with CSI to come up with 3 explicit design and structural strategies. And so I say this because it seems to be across the board that we're moving to a universal design, whereby, particularly in classrooms, where students can make the shift from all different content areas and not be confused. And so this is a really good opportunity to create these 3 explicit design instructional strategies with CNI. Another update, which has already been given by Dr. Padilla, includes the health services, which include the vaccination clinics in partnership with Middletown Medical, which has served over 350 students. And there will be another one this week. I think there was another one this week. And the last update came from Family and Community Engagement, FACE, and they are expanding on their FAMU project initiative coming June 22nd. They will be offering a learning potential initiative, which will engage parents in ELA and math pathways, and they are also providing a lot of technical assistant PDs to schools in terms of their engagement with families. And so that's all for our exceptional learners updates. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Burton. We're going to move on to Audit and Finance Committee, Mrs. Santiago.
Thank you, Madam President. Our Audit and Finance Committee meeting was just before this meeting, so most of the items are on tonight's agenda. Two exceptions, I believe, were, I guess we're still waiting on the extended transportation bid for the extended school year. And also Dr. Spindler made a presentation on the chart of accounts, which was one of her projects this year. She talked about, all the work that to remove some of the unnecessary ones. And also we also discussed some of the challenges that it's going to bring up for next year's budget discussions, of which she will be ready for to make any clarifications needed. I did just want to bring up one item that is in the in tonight's finance section. There's a donation of $1,500 for South Middle School from a former alumni, and I just wanted to bring that up to everyone's attention. I think that's great to be able for an alumni to come support the school that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Santiago. And you're right, that's really great. Thank you. So we're going to move on to our Deputy Superintendent, Mr. Forget.
Thank you, Madam President. This evening, I have one item for your consideration. It's a resolution to adopt the 2020-2021 school calendar.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? I see no hands. So roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein. Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stritter,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burke.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my item.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Forget. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction Elementary, Mrs. Moriarty.
Thank you, Madam President. Curriculum and Instruction Elementary presents items 6.1 and 6.2 as consent agenda items for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any item? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stritter,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam President. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mrs. Moriarty. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction Secondary, Mr. Bayer.
Thank you, Madam President. Curriculum Instruction Secondary has two items on the consent agenda for the board's consideration this evening.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stritter,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Mr. Baer. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Student Support Services, Dr. Roman.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening. This evening, we have 4 items on a consent agenda for student support services, 8.1 through 8.4 for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Beta,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levins.
Yes.
Thank you. That concludes my items.
Thank you, Dr. Roman. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Finance, Dr. Spindler.
Thank you, Madam President. I present to you items 9.1 through 9.9 as a consent agenda for your consideration.
Would any member like to separate out any of these items? Mr. Stridiron?
Yes, Madam President. 9.2, 9.6, 9.7.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so I'd like to entertain a motion on 9.1, 9.3, 4, 5, and 9.9. And do you have a 9.10?
No.
No, so up to
9.8.
9.1 through 9.9 minus 9.2, 9.6, 9.7.
Thank you. Thank you for helping me out. So, so I'd like to entertain a motion on those.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion on those items? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes?
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Beta.
Yes.
So let's move on to item 9.2. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Stridiron, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. I have a concern and a question about an expenditure that is on page 19 of the AP check register. It was dated April 30th, 2021 to a Margaret Gaidos. This is the third payment to her. The first one was in December 2020 of $742.50. The next one was March 2021 of $1,035. And this latest one on this page 19 is $900. Could someone let us know what these payments were for? Can let the public know what these payments were for and who this person is?
I'm going to defer to legal. Am I allowed to discuss that in public session?
Mr. Shaw?
The subject of the payment is certainly permissible for public discussion.
So this is
Hey, yeah, mhm.
this is in relation to support in the HR division for investigations.
Is there anything more that can be told to the public about these investigations and why these payments go back to December? And are there more payments coming?
So that's within this academic year. So, and this
And I
academic.
wouldn't know if there's any more payments unless there's any invoices that are attached to any payment before I submit another payment.
So, I'm sorry. Can I speak, Madam President?
Go ahead.
So, the description of the exact work or what this person was investigating cannot be made public if it involves finances?
In my opinion, if it's a matter, either pupil personnel or personnel, it should not be disclosed. I think the board's entitled to understand the nature of that, but not through public disclosure.
Okay, so can I ask a question about the part of the contract, not the contract, where the superintendent is allowed to expend up to $20,000 without board approval? Isn't there a stipulation in that the board must be told within 3 months the specific nature of the expenditure of the money? I know that's in there because I remember when we voted on it, that when the superintendent was given that authority, he was supposed to report to the board within 3 months what the expenditure money was for, and that never happened. The only way this came forward was because I asked questions and found out about this. So can you please, Mr. Shaw, can you clarify the details of how the board is supposed to be told about expenditures under $20,000?
If I had been asked to review our policies to answer this question ahead of the meeting, I'd be happy to, but otherwise I would have to go back into policies and find the answer for you.
Well,
Mr. Stridiron, can we get that answer for you and put it in the weekly, or is this something that's immediate?
Well, I think it's important, the fact that if the superintendent is hiring people to do investigations and the board doesn't know anything about it, and he doesn't tell the board within the time period that's in the policy, what other investigations don't we know about? What other expenditures of money don't we know about? And at what point does the board take its legal authority to oversee the expenditures of the superintendent? I'm very disturbed about this because this matter should have been handled in a different way. And I think the board at this point really needs to take its legal right and not allow the superintendent to go outside the contract. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're on item 9.2. Anybody else have any comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
No.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Abstain.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo.
Yes. We're going to move on to item 9.6. That's the next one that you wanted, Mr. Stridiron, correct? Okay. So I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Questions or discussion? I see Mr. Stridiron, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. So I know this was discussed in Buildings and Grounds, but the board was never provided with a structural engineer's report that stated that the building had to be demolished right now. I know that there are some architectural reports, but not a structural engineer's report. Do we have that report, and that can that be sent to the board? And then the contract here to do a survey, a topographic survey, this is what I do. This is my work. That price is way out of line. That is way too expensive to do that size property. And there is no way I would approve this. I'm sorry, you have to get other prices. This is way out of whack. I mean, I don't know what type of survey this is. It just says topographic survey work and boundary, but that's like 1/3 of an acre lot, and most of it's building. So are they going to do an Alta survey? I don't know. There's so much that's missing here. So I would prefer this to be tabled. I make a motion that this be tabled until we get the information that we need to make a determination on moving forward. Thank you.
So we have a motion to table. I need a second. I'm not getting a second.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call to table.
Mr. Stridiron,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Mr. Howard,
Levinstein,
No.
Ms. Maida,
yes,
Ms. Mineo,
no.
Ms. Santiago.
Yes.
That passes the table.
Okay, so that item is tabled. So let's move on to 9.7, please. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
second,
Thank you. Questions or discussion? Yes, Mr. Sturdiron?
Can someone just clarify what exactly this budget transfer is for? Thank you.
Dr. Spindler?
Yes, thank you. Trying to find the hand on this. So this is a board resolution to increase the budget to make the transfer from the reserves to pay for the capital projects that we expensed this year. And in order to do that transfer, you have to transfer it in your general fund as an interfund transfer, which increases a revenue for your capital fund, and your revenue and has to match your expenses as general accounting rules. So we're just pretty much taking this out of our reserve and putting it to expend in our capital fund. This has already been a voter approved in May of 2019.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
yes,
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stritter.
Yes.
Dr. Spindler, I think that concludes your items.
It does. Thank you very much. I was taking notes. It concludes my items.
Thank you, Dr. Spindler. We're going to move on to our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources, Mr. McLemore.
Thank you, Madam President. On the Human Resources agenda, I have items 10.1 through 10.19 for your consideration on tonight.
Would any member like to separate out any items? Yes, Mr. Stridiron, I see your hand.
10.6, please.
Say it again. 10.6.
10.6.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to separate out anything else? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion on 10.1 through 10.19 minus 10.6.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion on those items? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
yes,
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stritter,
Yes.
Mr. Walker.
Yes.
We're going to move to item 10.6. I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Yes, Mr. Stridiron.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I asked to review the entire file so that I can see for myself the history of employment of this individual, and to see the reviews and the back and forth between administration and this employee. And the file was incomplete. It didn't have anything from the last few years, and I did ask for the entire file. So the information that the person sent to the board was thorough. It included multiple requests for help that the district claims that they provided to this individual, but the file did not back that up. The file did not say that this person received this help. It's a mess. No matter what happens here, it's a mess. And I understand how politics and personal situations can get in the workplace. I understand politics because I understand how if someone is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, that sometimes people can take it certain ways. I've been through it myself. I mean, I've had 7 damaged tires. I've replaced 2 headlights and property stolen from my. I understand how it feels to be under these situations of stress. So I, in no good conscience, could vote to terminate this employee. They asked for help. They didn't get the help, and politics is in the way. And the worst place for politics to be is in education. Just keep that out and everything will be much better. So I cannot, in good conscience, vote to terminate. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Dr. Henderson,
Abstain.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
No.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton. Ms. Burton,
Yes.
that item passes.
Thank you.
Madam President, I'd like to request permission to add an item.
Okay. Would you like to read the item first and then we can vote on adding it?
Yes, Madam President. Be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation of the co-high school principal of NFA, Mr. Raul Rodriguez, effective June 8th, 2021.
Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion to add this to the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, questions or discussion on adding? Just on adding, not on the item. Roll call to add, please.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
No.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson.
Yes.
So now I'd like to entertain a motion on this item.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Mr. Stridiron, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam President. I tried to hit my hand up earlier, but I missed it. It's okay. I understand. So I actually asked for some information for backup information, and I didn't even hear a response. So I don't have the information that I need to make this decision. So I'm making a motion. I don't know if the other board members need any more information, but I'm making a motion to table this item.
I need a second. I don't see a second, Mr. Stridiron, so I'm going to ask anybody else if they have questions on this item. Then we're going to go to a roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stridiron,
No.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Abstain.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLemore. Let's see where we're going next. Next, we're going to our clerk of the board, Mr. McCoy.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the approval of the minutes from the May 25th regular meeting.
I'd like to entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Questions or discussion? Roll call, Mr. Clerk?
Ms. Maida,
Yes.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stritter,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinson.
Yes.
That concludes my items, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. So I guess we're up to this point. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Ms. Mineo,
Yes.
Ms. Santiago,
Yes.
Mr. Stritter,
Yes.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
Ms. Burton,
Yes.
Dr. Henderson,
Yes.
Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Levinstein,
Yes.
Ms. Maida.
Yes.